My name is Bill Edwards. I am the executive director at the Center Towards Self-Reliance in Pueblo, Colorado. An independent living center is a very specialized type of agency. It was originally formulated through the Americans with Disability Act of 1991. And actually, we have celebrated, because of that, we just got through celebrating our 30th anniversary. So it's kind of interesting. The focus of the independent living centers is basically two things. One, we are consumer focused, which means that we work with individuals when they come into our agency and we ask them, okay, where are you at and where do you want to be? And we work with them. We don't tell them, okay, you have to do this, 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 and this. We basically work with them to put together an independent living plan, which is consumer focused, so that consumer says, yeah, that is something I can do, and we can work on that. And the whole goal is for that consumer to become as independent as possible, whatever that may be for that consumer. And we do that through what are called 5 core services, which are the bellwether of every independent living center. It's kind of what marks us out. One of the, and I'll just kind of run down through those 5 core services. And then what I want to do is talk a little bit about the programs that we have that come out of those 5 core services. The first core service that we are involved in is what's called information and referral. And that's kind of somebody calls and they say, you know, I need assistance. I have a disability. And let's say they say, I need food. I'm out of food in the household. Can you help me with that? And if we, one of the things we do have, it's a program coming out of these core services, we do have a food pantry. And so we refer them over to our food pantry and they can get food service from that. But if we don't have that particular program, we have a database that has a listing of all the agencies and what services they provide, and we will refer them out to those agencies for service. The second major core service that we have is what's called peer support. And this is also kind of the second major tenet of the independent living movement. And that is, not only are we consumer directed, but we are consumer supported. 51% of our agency staff, at least 51%, have to have a disability. And on our board of directors, 51% or more of them also have to have a disability. And that makes anything that we do more, I think from my standpoint, it makes it more valid. You know, if I'm talking to a consumer that has traumatic brain injury, I can understand some of the struggles that they go through, that somebody who hasn't had that situation, they won't process it. And they think, well, I don't see you as being injured, you know, because it doesn't translate. But we can, because of the fact that we are big on peer direction and peer support, we can understand and we can speak to those needs. The third major core service that we provide is that of independent living skills training. And this takes a number of different types of approaches. We do things such as in this office, we will give people, if they need to get just basic educational skills training, we'll work with them on reading skills, we'll work with them on math skills, we work with them on computer skills. It may also be specialized type of training. We have a person that does employment services, and he'll work with a person to help them set up a resume and work with them to walk through the process of a potential job interview. And so we do a number of different things that are focused on that, as do almost all of the independent living centers. The next core service that we provide that is absolutely essential is that of transition services. And it kind of takes three different approaches. First, there's nursing home transition, where you have somebody that's in a nursing home setting, and we're also starting now to work with people that are in prison settings. And we have done in the past. We're not doing it as much now just because of the COVID situation, but we have done transitions for people in the Mental Health Institute here in Pueblo, but we'll help them transition out of those group home settings to what they call community-based living. It might be an apartment, it might be a house, it might be actually living with a relative or a friend, and we'll help them make that transition, working with funding we get from the state to help them get set up and be safe in the community of their choice. The other end of that core service is on the other end of the spectrum. We work with youth transition services, and that is a very important thing, because a lot of young people that have disabilities, they struggle to, once they leave high school, where they're kind of cocooned a lot at times, and they have special programs, and now, okay, you're out in the real world, and what do you want to do? And so we work with them in a number of different aspects to help them get prepared for that. We have, growing out of that, we have a person that is our youth specialist service provider, and she does different things, like she helps them learn to cook. We have a collaboration with Care and Share on cooking matters classes. They don't ask me to come in and teach them to cook. That would be a disaster. But anyways, they have they do things such as working with them in terms of vocational selection, and do they need further training and how to avail themselves of that. And we work with them in terms of if they need further education, we work with them in collaboration with the different higher education facilities. And that's specifically what all the other agencies do. They try to help the youth transition. The last thing is kind of in the middle is we want to provide preventive service, because we know for a fact that particularly during the pandemic, and again, we're addressing the COVID situation, that during the pandemic, the greatest number of people, percentage-wise, that developed serious illness and even died were in congregate care settings. And so we want to prevent somebody that may be on the verge of moving into a congregate care setting to stay in community-based living, because that's the safest place for them. And we do this in a number of different ways too. As we have a housing department, we have actually a home care division. But one of the best ways that we can do that is help the person modify their home so that it is safe for them. And we have a supportive service staff that goes out and installs ramps and grab bars and raised toilets and whatever else it may be needed, within certain limitations, obviously, that can help that person stay safe, but also stay connected to their community. And then we work very closely with people that provide orientation and mobility training. So it will particularly work with elderly individuals that may be losing their eyesight, and they are in greater danger of developing some difficulties getting around safely in their home, or using the things that they used to not even think about having to. One of the things that we don't even think about is, hey, boiling a pot of water. Well, if you've lost your eyesight, that can become a dangerous thing. And how do you go about doing that without getting hurt and putting yourself at risk? And so that's the focus that we have in terms of preventive service, and that's kind of the broad spectrum of the transition service. The last core service that we provide for is what's called advocacy. Advocacy takes two different forms. One of them is particularly important. We try to work with parents who have children that have a disability, so that that parent can become a strong advocate for their child in the school setting. You'd be surprised, even in this day and age, how many schools are ignorant of what it is that they need to provide as far as reasonable accommodation for individuals that have disabilities that are in their school setting. And so we work with the parent, because the parent is the first advocate and can be there more readily than we can. And so we'll train parents to be the advocate for the children. If the child is a little older, we'll work with that child so they become their own advocate, and they can stand up and say, no, I need this because this doesn't meet my need, in terms of testing or in terms of even classes, where Zoom meetings can be a real stretch for some kids. And so we work with them in terms of self-advocacy, but we also work with them in terms of systems advocacy. And I'll give you one example, and we are still struggling with this one, but it's one of the ones that's going to be ongoing for a while anyway. But the Social Security Administration, they are, for all intents and purposes, shut down other than by phone. And for some of our consumers, if they're trying to apply for SSI or SSDI application, we will assist them, but we're also trying to advocate for the Social Security Administration to at least have some open offices, and it's a frustration right now. And it's been my task over the last few months in terms of systems advocacy to be writing our senators and congressmen and saying something's got to change here, because particularly for people that have disabilities, and if we map out people, the ones that are deaf, ones that have a TBI, it's very difficult for them to deal with a situation where they're in a Zoom meeting, particularly when the SSA, in a couple of instances, said we don't have to provide a person that's skilled in ASL. And so we end up having to step in and go, no, this is wrong. And that's just one instance. There are other instances, the justice system, the human services system, where we step in and say, we need to make some changes here. And so those are the big 5 core services. In terms of how a person is determined to have a disability so that we can provide services, it's relatively, I guess, painless, simple. If somebody comes in and says, I have a disability, we sit down and we talk with them, and it runs the gamut, emotional disability, mental disabilities, physical disabilities, any type of disability. That's one of the unique things about the Centers for Independent Living, is that we work with anybody that has any type of disability. And most of the time, it's just somebody self-declaring that they have a disability. Now, there are some instances where there are times when other agencies require trained medical professionals input into the situation, like in certain situations with housing, for reasonable accommodations for housing, they will require some input obviously for home care. There has to be some sort of analysis as to what the person's need is. But for most of the people that we deal with, if they come in and declare that they have a disability, we will start to work with them and help them develop an independent living plan so that they can live as close to as independent as they can within the community of their choice. In terms of working with parents that have neglect or situations where they're facing possible removal of their child, if they come in and if they declare that they have a disability, we can work with them and try to work through the system. If they come in and let's flip it around and say I don't have a disability for one reason, but their child has a disability, and there's an issue there, we can work with them. It's just a little more complicated because our service is supposed to be directed toward people with disabilities. And there are ways that we can work with them in terms of community training or things along that line. But again, our main focus is with people that have disabilities. I think one question that a lot of people ask is, what's the cost of getting service through our agency? We are funded through grants and contracts, and so none of the services that we provide are cost the consumer. There may be specialty things, like for instance, if somebody needs a computer or hearing aids, we will try to work with them and get that cost cut down as much as possible. Sometimes there is some consumer cost, but it's just for equipment, not for the services that we provide. And again, we try to keep the cost of equipment to a minimal or to no cost through grants and other funding sources that we are able to access. Our agency is headquartered in Pueblo, but we cover all of southeastern Colorado from the Kansas border to the Oklahoma border up through the San Luis Valley. We have 4 regional offices, one in Lamar, one in Trinidad, one in Alamosa, and one in Canyon City. So we cover those areas with people that are, for lack of a better word, they're generalists. They're independent living specialists, but our headquarters have people that have particular skills. We have a deaf service specialist. We have 2 people that are low vision service specialists. We have a nursing home transition specialist, a youth service specialist. We have a housing director, an employment service specialist. We also have one we just added on to our staff that works with people that are applying for SSI or SSDI, and their application assistant for them. So we provide a number of specialists. And so if out in those outlying offices, if they need somebody that specializes in a particular service, they just have to call that specialist and they'll intervene and help them walk through the process. One of the easiest ways to find a center is to go to the website for the State Independent Living Council. And on the State Independent Living Council website, there's what's called a SIL locator. And if you go to that part of the SIL website, they will break it down by county. So you figure out what county you're in, and you look at that county, and it will tell you which office you would contact. Again, ours covers southeastern Colorado, but they're spread. There's 9 different centers spread throughout the state of Colorado. It covers from one border to the other.